Hey guys, hi, welcome back to my channel. It's me, Steven. This is going to be part two of two videos. I'm going to try and keep it to two. They're very long videos. I am very sorry. But this is a second part of a two-part story. The first part is a must watch before this one. So please, if you've not watched the other video, don't watch this one. It'll ruin every surprise. So go back and watch part one and then come back to this video, okay? So if you have already watched that first video, you know that I have walked into my first recovery meeting. My eyes were opened a little bit, and I walked into my second meeting, which is really the meeting I credit with saving my life, no uncertain terms. So that night, you know, I'm terrified to open that door. I open it, it's a basement of a church, and I open the door, and there standing in front of me is Bill G. He's standing there in his little cashmere sweater and his little Gucci loafers. He was a big fancy buyer for a department store, and he had all sorts of gorgeous clothes, and I was very jealous of him. I had known Bill for many, many years. I drank with Bill, I did everything with Bill. And there was Bill. And he looks at me and goes, "Oh my God, hi, welcome." I just terrified my cat, buddy. I'm sorry, honey. So he goes, "Oh my God, hi." You know, he's been waiting for me the whole time, I'm sure. So we go in, and he tells me where to sit, like the cool kids seat, you know. And in that meeting, someone typically spends about 20 minutes talking about their story, usually to celebrate their anniversary. Then we would read a little bit of one of our books, and then we would talk about what we read and how it and how it affected our sobriety, blah blah blah. And so after the meeting, I'm still in a fog. I had no idea what's going on. I didn't understand anything anyone had said. I didn't understand a word of what was read. But I'm like, I'm supposed to be here, I think. So it felt right, because I identified completely. Once I heard these people talk, it was like they were speaking a language I had always known, but didn't know I knew. Does that make any sense? They call it language of the heart. But so afterwards, you know, I'm all ready to go home in my little gross apartment, and my friend Bill goes, "Oh, Stephen, we're going to the SNS afterwards." You know, it was ritual that this little group of people would go to the SNS Diner in Cambridge and have dinner every Friday night. And so they brought me with them. I was penniless. I had no money, and I was just fidgeting with salt and pepper shakers at the table when the waitress came over, and Bill said, "Don't worry, Stephen, I got this. Order whatever you want." I had a chef salad with no tomatoes, with an extra side of dressing. And I had that chef salad every Friday night for about a year and a half. We went there every year and a half, every night, every Friday night for a year and a half or so. It was a magical time. So that first Friday night, we're sitting down, the food arrives. Now, Bill had ordered boneless chicken wings and onion rings. The food is set in front of him, still hot, and his cell phone rings. And he looks at it, and he takes the call. And it's his friend Tiffany, who's just been dropped off in Copley Square after a rotten date. The guy was a jerk. He dropped her off, and she was crying. He says, "I'll be right there to pick you up." And he gets up from the table, and he walks away. And I'm looking at the food. His food was still hot on the table. And I looked around, and like, he's leaving his food. Like, it just got here. She's a big girl. She can take care of herself. I had no idea, zero idea of what it was like to be a human being, to care about anybody or anything, even about myself. The idea that someone would walk away from a hot meal to go rescue a friend in trouble was alien to me, totally alien. Well, he went and he picked her up, and he brought her back, and it was Tiffany. And when I say Tiffany, because Tiffany was just instrumental in my sobriety. Just the personality she had like 2 years sober at that point. And she was like the elder statesman of our group. She was the most sober person, and she was just quirky and funny. She worked at a store that called Lily Pulitzer that sold all sorts of floral designs and stuff. Great. She was just very quirky, and she now lives and has this fantasy life that she's always dreamed of, that sobriety can offer. Just a surprise. Just a hint there. Tiffany was just the most charming girl ever, and she said that there's this meeting that she and Bill and a few other people go to on weekdays at 7:30 every weekday morning. 7:30 in the morning. That's cuckoo. But 7:30 in the morning, there is this meeting called Back Bay Steps, and that they go, and that I should go too. And so I went. I wake up at whatever, throw whatever on, and that Monday I went, and she said, when you're new, you say your name and that, you know, how many days you have sober. And at that point, because of my time in the hospital and the days she said, it's like 17 days sober or something. At that point, I was like 17, 18 days sober without drinking. And, you know, everyone hears that and they clap, clap, clap. So I walk into Back Bay Steps, and there's like 200 people sitting in what is, if you go to Copley Square in Boston, Trinity Church is right there. Well, the attic, the top part of that onion there, the top of the dome there, is a room, and that was where this recovery meeting happened every weekday morning at 7:30 for probably the first year. It moved after that to a church basement somewhere on Arlington Street. But it was this magnificent building we got to walk into a very private place. And we go up there into that church with these windows all around us, and we share, and it was just the most magical room. It was the first place I could ever just honestly just open and breathe and not be in pain. And I just remember there's one moment, I don't even know what the topic was, but I just realized, and I was maybe 30 days sober, that I was finally safe. And for the first time ever, I didn't want to die. For the first time ever, I was surrounded by people who knew me and understood me and cared for me. And it was just the most magical place. And this sense of relief that I was going to be okay, because everyone around me had the same problem I had. And they all seemed to be okay. And if I did what they did, I might be okay too. And that realization, that sudden realization, struck me like a brick. And I started to sob uncontrollably. I ran down this hallway, and I crouched down on the floor, and I wrapped my arms around my knees, and I'm sobbing. And this guy, Joe, who never really got sobriety, it never really stuck. But then he was sober. Him and this blonde woman, I forget what her name was, they both came over and sat down next to me, real close, like real friends, and just sat there with me and let me cry. And it was one of the most beautiful things that's ever happened to me. And it was just this perfect moment. I would eventually cry a lot in meetings, but usually for good things. So I'm at Back Bay Steps every day. There's something called sponsorship. A sponsor is someone who has typically been through all the steps of recovery, has usually survived recovery for enough time to prove to somebody else that it does work, it is worth it. And typically you would ask someone to be your sponsor, someone who emulates who you would like to be, someone who has what you want, like has a happy life and has a family, and they have the kind of life that you want. And so a sponsor would just teach you to do what they did to get what they have. Well, I had no idea what kind of life I wanted. I had no idea how to find someone who had this thing. So Tiffany goes, "Oh, do you know this guy John?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know John. He's like this misogynistic, he's a jerk. Jerk, capital J. He hated women, but he loved to hug them." He was just a jerk. He was from Chelsea originally, but he was like this thick Italian accent, and he used to be a muscle guy, but that all went away, so he's this kind of flabby guy in a Gold's Gym jacket and a pair of sweatpants, and he's just talked like, he just sounded like a thug. He was a thug. He had murdered people. I mean, he was a thug. And she goes, you know John? I'm like, yeah, I know John. And I know I was sober long enough to have opinions of people. And I learned to not have opinions because sometimes you just don't know. But she goes, well, he's your sponsor. And I'm like, what? I didn't know I had a choice. So he's my sponsor. And John said that we were going to get started on the steps of sobriety right away. There was no waiting. He said the guys that started this whole program didn't wait a year to help the next person, the next alcoholic. They just reached out for the next alcoholic because that's what we have to do to stay sober. And he's like, you don't wait a year, because that was the custom. Typically, you would wait a year before you started doing step work and stuff. It was ridiculous, but he's like, let's get started. And so we did. And, you know, he walked me through this book that we read, and he walked me through his experiences with it. And, you know, we did the first, second, third step. The fourth step, which, if you know anything about the steps, is a little terrifying. It's an inventory of your entire life kind of thing. But I wasn't terrified. I wasn't afraid of it, as I had heard other people talk about it, because I wanted to die. Those feelings hadn't gone away immediately, but I wanted to know the reason that I was sick. I wanted to look at the bare bones of my illness and find out what the freaking problem was. Turns out it was me. But I wanted to know exactly what the problem was. And to find out what the problem was, I had to do that inventory. And so I was sort of looking forward to it. So we knocked it out of the park. We did it quickly, but thoroughly. And then we did the fifth step, which is, you know, where I share pretty much everything with my sponsor. And that was easier because I love to talk. It probably took 4 hours. You think these videos are long? Woo, you should have had me as a sponsee. The next day after we did my fifth step, we're sitting at Obanpan near, no, it was Rebecca's Cafe. And we're having breakfast before the meeting. And this kid that I know, I'd known for years, walks up, he sits down and says, hey, you know, John, would you be my sponsor? And John says, I'm full up, but he's free. Me. And me and this kid looked at each other with absolute horror. The two of us are like, And that's how I started becoming a sponsor to other people in sobriety. As long as I had some time and experience more than somebody else who's newer, then I was equipped to sponsor someone, is in my sponsor's eyes. And so I started sponsoring another alcoholic, which is, if someone's looking for the magic pill, if you're looking for the magic button, the magic trick, the thing that makes this all work, I'm going to tell you the secret. I'm going to just tell it to you right now. Working with another alcoholic. If you're going to spend every minute thinking about you and your problems and how you affect other people and they affect you and blah, blah. If it's always about you, I'm sorry to tell you, you're going to be, this is my experience and my thoughts. Sorry. I'm proselytizing. But if I make this all about me and what I think and what I'm doing and if I'm not working with somebody else, then I'm stuck. I'm never going to go forward. I'm never going to really recover. I have to give it away to keep it, is what they say. So working with sponsees the entire time, part of my sobriety, for the most part, there have been times I haven't. Working with another person, working with another alcoholic has been the key to my sobriety. If you're trying to do this for you, if you're trying to do this all about you, it's just you, and you're lost, and you're alone, and you're done for. I'll promise you. I can promise you. I've seen plenty of people who got it, who didn't work with other people, and atrophy happens, entropy happens, and they slip and they go away. And I have seen enough people die, literally, of alcoholism that I know I know, because I wanted to die, that this would kill me. So working with other people, having sponsees, having a sponsor was the trick to my sobriety. So those people who have tried this before, if you haven't sponsored anybody, stay sober long enough. Do enough of the work to get to the point where you can sponsor someone. When you're in a meeting and someone says, is anyone willing to sponsor a newcomer? Raise your god darn hand and work with another person. And I'll promise you, it'll work. It did for me. I will say that. So, you know, the hours passed, the days passed, the weeks passed, and I have a year sober. Now, my thug sponsor, who was a jerk the entire time, my nicknames were A-hole, but he would call me the full thing. Hey, what's going on? A-hole, you know. He was just very rough and very abrasive. No one has ever loved me more, but he was very abrasive and crude in a lot of ways. And I was, after that first year, I felt, you know, I think I've grown enough to get past him and find someone else who has what I want. And what I wanted was peace, comfort, love, patience, love, and tolerance are these three general principles I was really looking for. And they all were embodied in this other guy named John. At my home group, my new home group, which is Crossroads in Boston, there was this guy, John, who'd been sober for 10 years, I think. And whenever there was a question as to what we should do at a certain time, and no one knew what to do, people looked at John. He was an elder statesman, as we would say, in terms of his behavior. He had information and he had it available. And if you needed it and asked for it, he would help you out. He wasn't going to sit there and tell everyone what to do. And he was just a gentleman. And I wanted to do what he had. And so I asked John to be my sponsor. And the thing that kept John sober was working with others and service towards others. In any real recovery program, there's going to be a service structure. People who volunteer to do certain jobs. No one's paid for this stuff at certain levels. There's other levels where they might be, but that's just a different story. There's a service structure to make sure that this program continues to go forward. Literature is produced, meetings are continued, just small stuff like that. But he felt that service to others was just as important as working with others. And so he got me involved in the service structure of the program that I practice. And there I learned humility, which was a surprise to me. I learned the value of sacrifice, that I always get more than I give when I give with a humble heart. Does that make any sense? I always get more than I give. And it just taught me so many things. And I met hundreds and thousands of people who all wanted all of us to move forward in the best possible way. It was like amazing. People will sometimes see recovery groups as being a cult because we all have this language that we use. We always talk about certain things in these particular phrases. In this one recovery program that I practice, that God is a big part of it. Religion isn't, but spirituality, God is talked a lot. Everyone talks about God and Jesus is my higher power. Because when the book that we all read was written, that was the language of the time. The two guys that started this whole thing were white Christians in 1935. So everything was God. Everything was white male God. And so that was the language of the book. My sponsor taught me to look past all of that and to not get too wrapped up in the religious and the crazy, kooky, culty thing that people see. But if you get past that, all it is people trying to help each other stay sober. And that's it. People focus way too much on the language, and that's just my personal belief. So I told you I was going to talk about my higher power, and I call my higher power, hey you. I don't call my higher power God, because honestly, the thing is just you can find a higher power of your own understanding. Personally, My mind is not big enough to understand a higher power. If I can comprehend and understand the actions of a divine being, what am I? Divine? No, I'm a jerk. I'm a guy. I'm a meatbag. What do I know of divinity, right? So for me, my higher power was just this guy, kind of somebody. Back when I was at the Ramrod, throwing up behind it, how's this for an image? My subscribers, if you're still watching this damn video, my subscribers, you know who I am. You know who I am. Picture this. Sicily, 1922. No, picture this. I'm standing behind a dumpster, behind a leather bar. I'm shirtless. I have no idea where my shirt went, and God knows you don't want to see what I look like without a shirt. I am throwing up all over my pants, my boots. My boots are covered, and there's this like rock stuck in the bottom of my boot. They're really great engineer boots. I still have them. And there's this rock stuck in the bottom of my boot, and I'm trying to like knock it out with my fingers to kind of take it off so I can not feel it when I walk. And it's a piece of broken glass stuck inside the bottom of my boot, and I'm swiping at it with my fingers, and my fingers are bleeding. I'm covered. I got vomit all over my pants, no t-shirt, and I'm just throwing up and drunk. So of course I'm yelling out like, "Hey you, what the F?" Like, and so I'm yelling, "Hey you, like it's somebody up there hates me. What's going on?" And I'm like, "Hey you, give me a freaking break," you know? And then later on down the road, with some sobriety under my belt, it's still "Hey you." When things work out in my benefit, I'm like, "Hey, hey you, thanks." My sponsor was very keen to tell me, don't thank my higher power for everything. Because if I start to think my higher power is responsible for everything, when the crap hits the fan, I'm going to start to blame my higher power, saying, "Why are you doing this to me?" So my higher power isn't this big divine being. My higher power is this vague entity. He doesn't look like anything. He's probably not even a he. But I have enough evidence. I've seen enough things happen for me to really believe that there is something out there. A higher power that doesn't want to get me the right parking space at the right time. It's not the parking god. And when I ask for help, sometimes the answer is no, and I have to accept that. Yes or no. And it's just... So these are all things I learned from these people in recovery, especially in the service structure. Patience, love, and tolerance. I continue working the steps that you have to take, really, that are suggested, really. And I made amends to the people who I had hurt in the past, as long as it wouldn't hurt them. Through all of the stories I've told you, my recovery will sound really anticlimactic. I showed up to meetings as often as possible. When I first got sober, I was going to maybe 10 meetings a week. And then the longer I stayed sober, the fewer and fewer, but usually 4 or 5 days a week, I would go to meetings. And I would take part in different assemblies and organizations, and just the process to keep the program going. Again, printing literature, making sure phone lines were available for people who, when they needed help, they could call. And my sobriety just kind of crept along slowly, much like my disease of alcoholism crept along slowly. And it was only after the first maybe 2-3 years that I realized I really didn't want to drink. It never crosses my mind. And then suddenly I have 5 years sober, and I'm faced with the greatest challenge to my sobriety. I was in a mugging. I was stabbed in the chest, right here, up here. I made a video about that a long time ago. I was stabbed in the chest with a carving knife, like a chef's knife. It went all the way through my lung, my ribs, my lung. It went through and across my diaphragm, and I almost died. And it took me probably 6 months to really recover from that. And it took a whole community of people around me were there to lift me up, to drive me to a grocery store when I needed help, to help me, literally help me step out of the car because I couldn't even bend over enough to move. The thoracic surgery was just really traumatic. But the care and support I got, and the fact that, you know, I faced the greatest physical pain of my life without drinking, without thinking about drinking. When I was 2 years sober, my grandmother, the woman that saved my life back there when I was 14 years old, she died. I had been sober for a couple of years, and she got to witness me being completely me. We had nothing that was unsaid. The relationship I had with her was 100% repaired and richer than I ever dreamed of. When she died, I thought it would kill me. I thought it would kill me. In the end, it was one of the most beautiful experiences. I was sad she was gone, but it was a beautiful experience, mourning my grandmother and being available for my grandmother. It was just, and there were lots of things. There are lots of ways that my sobriety was tested. In 2009, I met the man of my dreams. And as a middle-aged man, I had never imagined marriage would ever be even a fictional reality. But in 2009, I met the man of my dreams, and I got married to him right on the beach in Herring Cove in Cape Cod. And I got married to the man of my dreams. A year later, he told me he didn't love me. And that was the end of our relationship. And I remember standing in front of a train track thinking, at South Station in Boston, thinking it can't hurt anymore to jump in front of a train. And then I realized, oh my God, I'm going to kill myself over this douche, this jerk. And that feeling lasted a half hour, you know, and where in the past, in my drinking days, it would have consumed me. It would have ruled my life for years. I wish I could tell you in definitive things that happened in my sobriety as I can tell you has happened in my drinking years. But my sober life is just so peaceful and calm, and for the most part, happy. When I can accept the things that they are as they are, and if there are things I can change, there's a whole serenity prayer built around that. The things I can change, if I have the courage to recognize that, the things I can change and I can't. If I take action, I do what I have to do, the next right thing, all's good. And it's wacky. I know that there's something I'm missing. There's so much I want to tell you. There were times that I did not go to meetings. Back in 2015, I stopped going for almost a year. And I still go to meetings. I still probably go to 2 or 3 meetings a week. Because if I stop going, I forget, because I have a built-in forgetter, they call it. I forget that I have a problem, and I start behaving as if I don't have a problem. And suddenly, I'm doing things I really shouldn't do. You know, I went a whole year without going to meetings, and I went into a really dark place, and I was living in Florida. At one point, I was driving, trying to find a tree large enough to literally drive into. My brain had slipped right back into that old behavior. So I started going back to meetings. And of course, I remember, I have a mental illness that really wants me dead. So, you know, I go to meetings. I do the things I'm supposed to do. I work with another alcoholic. I have a sponsee who just celebrated 2 years today. And if I haven't wanted to cry in these 2 videos until now, this young lady, I'm sponsoring she's a young lesbian with her fiance is also an alcoholic. To see the growth from her shattering her teeth in a bar somewhere, peeing in her bed, she's just having this disastrous relationships. Now she's got her teeth are fixed. She and her fiance have bought a house. we call them the promises. These promises all come to pass, usually after you do some of the work. But I wish I were being more descriptive of the good parts of my sobriety, because it's so good. It's so good. Today was my, let's talk about my anniversary, which is the 28th. It was a perfect day. It was a perfect day. It was the last day of my vacation from a job that I love. It was a job I love. I had to have a background check done, a pretty thorough background check done by the federal government. Does a background check on me. I wasn't worried at all. I'm 18 years sober. Well, I was 15 years sober when I got the job. 14. But I'm on the last day of my vacation from a job that I love, that I excel in, that I'm getting compliments all the time. I'm a brand ambassador. I'm a brand ambassador for my company. Me. The person who used to stand behind leather barred dumpsters puking on themselves, bleeding with, I'm the brand ambassador of my company. I woke up late that day. I let my cat out. He came back in. We had treats. I had a bowl of cereal. I took a nap, and I fielded hundreds of comments and messages and emails and of congratulations. And it's a pandemic going on right now, so I spent most of the day at home playing a video game in my apartment, which is tiny, and I want to move, but it was everything I've ever fantasized about. I've only ever fantasized. The only fantasy I ever really, really wanted was to be loved, to know that I'm capable of love, to be safe. That was one of the questions that the intake nurse asked me. I forgot. It was this intake nurse when I went to Faulkner Hospital, and she asked how much I drank, but I forgot. She asked if I felt safe. And I didn't know what she meant. Safe? What do you mean safe? I'm in a locked psych ward. Of course I'm safe. What's going to happen to me here? She's like, no, do you feel safe? I had no idea what she was talking about. And today I know what she's talking about. I can take a breath. I have no real worry. If I'm in a car and I'm driving down the road and the police siren is behind me, I know he's not pulling me over. And if he does, I have done nothing wrong. There's no reason for me to worry. It's just a beautiful life. It's a beautiful, beautiful life. And I really wish I had spent more time. I wish I had a more clear idea of how to tell you, like how to stay sober. Just don't drink. I hate to say it's as simple as that. Don't drink. When I went and learned how to snorkel, I went on my first cruise in 2014, and I went on Amazon. I bought 6 pair of snorkeling fins. I took a vacation day, went to Cape Cod, and I practiced swimming with all of these fins. And God, what was I? What was I going to tell you about oh my God, I was going to tell you about some. Oh, I forgot. I'm all over the boat. What was I going to tell you? I know what it was I was trying to think of. I can't breathe underwater. That's what I was trying to. I was trying to come to the point. I was snorkeling and I realized I can't breathe underwater, so I'm not going to try. I can't drink in safety, so I don't drink. I can't drink and not know that I'm not going to end up in jail. I've been in jail. Not in prison, but I've been in a jail cell for longer than I want to be. I won't, if I don't drink, I'm probably not going to end up in a psych ward. If I don't drink, I'm probably not going to get married to somebody. Kidding. But if I don't drink, I won't suffer the consequences of alcoholism. It's just as simple as that. I can't breathe underwater, so I don't try. I can't drink in safety, so I'm not going to drink. It's just as simple as that. I really do wish that I could give some sort of definitive plan to follow to help you stay sober. I was given a very distinct plan to help me stay sober, but that distinct plan came in the form of a book and meetings in a group, in an organization, in a meeting that I'm not going to name because it's kind of an anonymous thing. I was given direct suggestions on what to do next. I don't know how I would have stayed sober without the direction I was given and the examples of the people around me. So I, in this video, probably can't give you that direction. I'm going to encourage you to look for that direction, be it in any form you can. Some people get sober through their religion. You know, I have a friend she's the super uber duper, she's the most ideal, perfect Christian I've ever met in my life. She literally lives by the ideals of Christ. It's impossible, but she does it. But that's how she's trying to stay sober. And if that works for her, great. For me, I needed the program and a guide and suggestions and steps to actually take in a row in order to find the results I wanted and I needed. So the program that I practice, again, I'm not going to name it, worked brilliantly for me. And the reason it really worked, and I can promise you, is that I was able to look past or through the sort of religious aspects that are sometimes seen there. The one thing that I think people get kind of squirrely about that program is because, you know, the word God is bandied around so much. There's a chapter called a chapter to the agnostics, and it talks about those people who don't believe in God but don't not believe in God, you know, and it says it's okay. Have your own form of a higher power. It's okay. Just have something, you know, be on the path. If we aim in the direction of perfection, we don't have to get there. We don't have to be perfect. But if we kind of work our way in that general direction, it's good. Things are going to work out. The only problem I have with the literature is at the end of that chapter, it says it's okay. You don't have to believe in God, but you will. We'll get you, my pretty. You know, that's my only problem with some of the literature. But I can look past that. I have determined that I have my own little higher power. Hey, you. Has very little power, but sometimes I get a nudge when I need it. You know what I mean? So I would encourage you to look into a program of some kind, just because I personally, my broken mind couldn't fix my broken mind, and I needed someone outside of me to give me some direction. So that worked really well for me. Take things with a grain of salt. I would try my best to encourage you to listen and understand that you may not understand the reason someone says to do something, but try it, because if they did it and it worked for them, it might work for you too. All right, I don't think I could really expand on that. I have an email address. So if you have a question, if you want to vent, if you, whatever, you want to reach out and somehow get in touch with me, I have an email address. It's my screen name here on YouTube, steven.pereira.com at gmail.com, I should say. So steven.pereira@gmail.com. If you want to look at the spelling of that, go up to the About tab, and you'll see all of my information there, and my email address is right there. Some people have found me on Messenger. I would encourage you to write me an email, because Messenger is just a little crazy, and I won't be able to really respond as I would like to, as I could in an email. Lastly, if you're watching this video because you have a problem or think you have a problem, and you think you're all by yourself, the world sucks, everything sucks, you suck, know that one person, that could be me, cares. And I can promise you that it can get a lot better. It's amazing. I love my life. I love my life. It's not always perfect, but I love my life. I love everyone in it. Even the people I don't like, because they teach me a lot, you know? It's okay. You'll be okay. Trust me. It just takes a little work. That's all. Know that I love you. I do. And I'll talk to you soon. Okay. Yeah. If you need anything, let me know. All right. Talk to you later. Fly safe, boys and girls. I'll talk to you later. Bye.